Hi, this is Lawton Steele. In this video, we're going to discuss how to keep alignment in our builds as we progress through the build process. This is going to cover quite a bit of information in a short period of time, so if you have to pause it, take notes, feel free to do that, but I'm going to go quickly. What is the grid? The grid is a series of snapping points in a region. Well, what's a region? If we look at a map, we can see that the regions are squares. Each region has its own name. The region that we're in right now is called Belgareth, and if we look over here, we can see that region on the map. The boundary is right here. The name of the region is in the lower left-hand corner, along with the rating of the region and how many avatars are in the region at the time. If we look at the region, each region has its own coordinates, separate from any other region. There are also grid coordinates which pertain to the whole map, the whole grid, which is the whole world of SL. Getting back to the region, region coordinates start in the lower southwest corner at 0. So from west to east is X. From south to north is Y. So if we click in this lower corner here, we can see that X and Y are very low. See X and Y over here? If we click over here, X will be high, but Y will be low because Y goes south to north. Likewise, if we click up here, X will be low because X goes west to east, but Y will be high. And if we click in this corner, both will be high because you're going up in both directions. Region coordinates are between 0 and 255, X and Y. Z is not represented here. Z represents height. You can see Z here, but you can't see Z on the map because you're looking at it directly down. So it's a 2D map and doesn't actually represent Z. Now you can pick Z and then teleport to it. You can set Z to a particular height and then teleport to that particular location, but otherwise the map doesn't represent Z. So that's how coordinates work within a region. So within a region, what happens is you go into your edit tool and go into where it says snap, make sure that's turned on so you get grid snapping. Then you go in here and you set your grid unit to something that's meaningful to you. Right now it's set for half-meter increments, and those increments are divided evenly among the region coordinates, as you see here. So this box is sitting at 50.5 to the X, 54.5 to the Y, and 2750.5 to the Z. If we grab one of these multi-axis arrows here, you can see the grid. And this is the only time you can actually see it, is when you're actually using the adjusters. If you're using arrows, you only see a ruler instead. So this gives you a representation of what the grid would look like if you could see it. It has snapping points. So the grid is dynamic. You can change the snapping points to whatever you want. I can set this to 0.1 and watch what happens. So it doesn't matter what you set it at. It'll change according to what you want, and it'll distribute those grid coordinates evenly amongst the region coordinates. So the grid snapping points are changed here. Let's go ahead and change it back to 0.5, which is a half meter. Now let's take a look at how prims snap together. Really, they're not snapping together. What's happening is you're moving two prims next to each other on snapping points. And if they match or not is dependent on the size of the prim. So the size of the prim is very important. You can see we have overlap here. The flicker is an indicator of overlap. You're having two prims in the same space and they're fighting each other for display of the faces, and so you get flicker. So what's happening here is that the sizes don't correlate and match together at the snapping points that we're at, even though the snapping points are right next to each other. And why that is because if you look at a prim, the position of a prim is at the very center of it. See this? It's at the very center. And so when you're actually snapping, only half of the prim is taken into account to match one to another. So how do we fix this problem? Well, you could do this. You could go and turn on subunits, which gives you finer snapping. And the snapping adjusts according to how far away you are from the actual prim. The farther away you are, the more coarse the snapping is, especially if you have subunits turned off, and especially if your units is set to a finer detail. And then you won't get effective snapping unless you're closer with the camera. So keep that in mind. So there we have a good snapping point. We don't have any overlap. We can look and see that. Here we have another prim which is .375 in width. Let's try to snap it. This one is not snapping. Let's try moving it again. There we go. Let's see if we got overlap. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so the subunits allowed us to snap the two prims together. But look at the position we have here on this particular prim on the X side. It's at .813. Now if you're using subunits all the time, this may not necessarily be an issue, but it might cause really fine mismatches to creep in over time. And then you'll have something where you have flicker, but you can't really see it until you get real close. Now that may not matter to you, but it matters to me. So this is how I build. I'll show you how I build. I use 0.025 and I keep the subunits off unless I need them. In this way, I can still match up prims as needed, but also have a decent snapping system that isn't overly complex. To me, it's perfect. Now again, if you move your camera away, you will have, let me turn this dark so you can see. Let's go with this. You will have situations where it doesn't want to snap perfectly. Let's go back a little bit. See there, it's much coarser. It doesn't want to snap. It's because the camera is too far away. Okay, so the grid unit really doesn't matter if you're going to use subunits because it's going to give you subunits anyway, and it doesn't matter. You're just going to have a bunch of subunits to be able to snap. If that's the way you want to build, that's fine. But the reason I build using 0.025 is because I use a pattern of prim sizes. And that pattern is also conducive to keeping everything in alignment all the time without any issues whatsoever. So this formula that I use with the 0.025, what it does is it gives me increments of 0, 25, 50, 75, 0, 25, 50, 75. And it works. So to be able to show you that, I'll just have to show you how I build and how it all correlates together. Now there are going to still be issues at times where you're not going to be able to get prims to snap together. It's always going to be the case. How do you fix that? Well, let's go back to what we had before, 0.5. Move this back and try to snap it again. Let's move both of them. There we go. We're in the same situation we were before. The quickest solution, now keep in mind this is coarse. If you had this set for a finer setting, it would be a little bit easier. But we take and move the prim, whichever one we want to move, and we downsize it to a size that correlates with the actual grid unit setting. And then we move it, and then we size it from the back side back to what it was. Now again, you're going to run into situations, unless you set this really fine, like 0.025, where you're not going to be able to get that adjustment, just like this one here, 375. You're not going to be able to match that up. Let's try it. We can't match it up, obviously. So we're going to move it up to 0.5. Then we're going to match it up, and then we can't move it down to 0.375 again, right? There's no way with the snapping. So in that situation, you could go like this, 0.25, drop it down to 375, and you're done. Now again, you're going to run into these situations constantly, but this particular grid setting has given me the ability to keep it all in check to where it doesn't get out of hand. So let's go ahead and discuss what we do when we first start building. Let's say we're going to build. We're going to drop a prim on the ground, and the first thing we're going to notice is that the prim is at random coordinates. Now the Z is already in line with the grid, which I'll set it to 5 for now just so you can see. It's in line with the grid, 2750.5, and the reason for that is we're building on a platform. The platform is sitting at 2750 even, and the platform itself is a ½ meter in height. So it matches perfectly, and it's at a snapping point, and we can verify this by just moving it up and down. It doesn't go into the platform, it's right on it. And that was by design. If you put a platform at a good position and its size is a good size in relation to your grid unit, it's going to give you that Z alignment when you drop a prim on the floor. So X and Y are all we have to worry about in this case on this platform. Since X and Y are not correlating with these fractions here, the decimals, they're not correlating with 0.5 at all. They don't mathematically go together. So you have to adjust the X and Y. Now you can do that by just moving X and Y like this and making sure it's on a grid snapping point. Or what I like to do, let's just delete this. I like to just go in here, set it for the nearest number, and be done with it. And what I do, I set it for the nearest whole number without a fraction or without a decimal. And the reason for that is because most grid unit settings are going to go into a whole number if they're set properly. Obviously, you're not going to set a grid unit setting of 0.333 or of pi or whatever number that's oddball like that, because it's just not going to work with the grid. It's not going to work with snapping prims together. It's going to be a nightmare, right? So you use a common sense setting. For me, it's 0.025. So let's get started with building. Now that we have our prim in position in line with the grid, we will be able to build off of this in a way that we can keep alignment. The reason I like to build in a symmetrical manner is because it facilitates speed, and speed is efficiency. The other thing I like to do is I like to use these fields here in the edit tool for speed as well, and I'll show you how that works. First, I've already positioned it into where it needs to be in line with the grid. So let's go ahead and resize this to 10 by 10. Now if I had done this by just using the stretch nodes, it would take forever. Watch. I want to get it up to 10, so I got to zoom out, right? Now I could also do it this way. I could set stretch both sides temporarily, and then I could drag and set both sides, and that would be quicker, but it's still not as quick as the method that I use with the fields. Let's turn that back off because I don't like using it, and I'll show you how quick it is. You're done. Saves a lot of time. If you can get used to doing this, all you have to do is left click on the end with the space and drag across while holding the left mouse button. That selects it and makes it so whatever you type is going to overwrite it. Then you just hit tab, it takes you to the next field, you're done. Before we actually start building, I want to cover the camera control shortcuts really quick. If you hold Alt and then left click around, you reposition your camera to a different focal point wherever you click. If you hold the left mouse button down, you can then rotate around that point by moving left and right. You can push and pull to zoom in and out. That's the Alt key plus holding left mouse button. Once you have that left mouse button held, you can release the Alt key and you're still doing that same thing. If you hit Control and hold it, you now rotate up and down and left and right instead of zooming in and out and left and right. If you, while holding Control, hit Shift, you can pan left and right, up and down. Release Control and Shift and you go back to the Alt mode where you can rotate and push and pull for zoom. So again, Alt left click to position, Alt left click and hold, then you can just release Alt while you're holding the left click and then move in and out and rotate. Then you can press Control and then you can rotate up and down instead of zooming, and then you can do Control Shift and you have your panning. So use those, get used to them, get your muscle memory going, and it'll be like second nature. You'll be moving around really quick. Let's go ahead and get started with building. Like I said, I like to build symmetrically because it speeds things up. It doesn't mean I always build symmetrically. It just means that I tend to do that more often than not so that I can get the elements I want in a speedy manner. And I'll show you how that works. We have our prim that's sitting on the ground here, and if you're new to building, you might think that you need another prim now. Let's go ahead and hit Control 4 and drop another prim on the ground. Well, the problem with that is that if you do that, you have to move it in place, you have to size it. That's an extra step or two. Instead, just use Shift Drag on the arrow. I'm going to Shift Drag up. Now I have another prim that's already aligned to the Z axis. All I have to do is resize it. So let's say I want to resize it to a 2 by 2. Now again, I just sped this process up by not having to use the nodes to resize it. I just typed it in really quick. So then I can use these corner multi-axis points to grab the prim and move it along two different axes and get it where I need it really quickly. Then I can zoom in, drop it down, get over here, pay attention, make sure it's where I need it to be. Now that took a little longer than it should have. Let's put it back and we'll try it again. Whoop, hit the wrong button. There we go. Alright, let's grab that again and see if we can get it closer. Look at that. It's almost there, but it's sitting up. I didn't put it on the floor. So let's do that again. We'll put it down first. So when we resize it, we put it down. We should have done that in the first place. That's usually what I do. But I got sidetracked. So let's do it again. I'll shift drag up. I'll put it down. That's what I usually do. Then I'll resize it. Then I'll grab it. Then I'll move it. Boom. How quick was that? So then I'll shift drag this over. And notice that I didn't even have to get close to it to see that it had lined up. Then I'll shift drag these two. And I just saved myself a ton of time right there. Then if I want a wall, I'll just shift drag this over. And then I'll resize it really quick. I'll size it to about, let's do a 2.5. So I'm watching the number at the top when I'm doing this. Then I'll just grab this one. I got to get a little closer. There we go. Make sure that's good. Then I can drag this up and get it where I want it. 3 maybe. Then I'll just shift drag this over. Make sure that's good, and it's not. So I need to move it in 1 notch. I did it again. That's another thing. When your camera is farther away, it tends to skip every other or more snapping point. So I need to get closer to be able to get it to snap right. There we go. Now I can take these, if I want 2 more walls, I shift drag those, rotate them. And since they were already in the right position on these 2, they go right into position there. And that's how symmetrical building really helps to bring things right where you need them to be really quickly. Then I can take and decide that I don't necessarily want these to be in the corners. I can size them down and they're already inset. I don't have to do anything. So then if I want to take this same size and apply it to all of these, I simply have to copy the size with this C button next to the size. Go over here and paste it. Go over here and paste it. Same thing for this one. Now if I need another wall, I'll just shift drag this, rotate it. I'll bring it over here and I'll put it in line with that. I need to move it out a little bit. There we go. Then what I'll do is resize this one. And once I get the one sized, at least pretty close to where I want it, then I can take and copy it, rotate it, put it over here. Get it close, get in there so I can get it done. There it is. So then I can see kind of how far out I have to go, and I have to make a decision. Do I want these to just meet in the center? Make sure that's right. If that's the case, then I can do that, or I can bring one in to the end so that it looks right inside. So I can do that like that. Then I just grab these two. I can shift drag those, rotate them. They're already on the axis that I need. I just move it in. So in doing this, what you're doing is you're eliminating having to move on multiple axes at the same time. Most of the time, you only have to move it on one. You just shift copy it, move it, rotate it if you have to, and you're done. That's why symmetrical building is So easy and so quick. And before you know it, you have a build. And that's how you can build so fast. And then you can go back in, add in elements. Like you can put a door here. We can make this, what, 2.0, shift drag. There we go. Say we need a door on the other side. Take this one, delete it, shift drag, and it's basically done. If we need a roof, we can just drag this up, and then let's say we don't want this to be a flat roof, we can drag it up. Doesn't matter how tall it is, it's just a roof. And we already know that the bottom is matched up, so we don't have to worry about that. So we can just taper one side of it. We're done. Then we can, if we want to, grab these posts, and these are just accent posts, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they help support the roof. And what we want to do, this is another thing, get your camera in there so you can see and line it up with a view to where you can make for sure that you're actually getting that up there and getting it right where it needs to be. And once you get that first height for this one, just look at it. I'm holding Control Shift to see the height, or you can just look over here. It's 3. I just grab the others, and since if you use a resize, like if you just put 3 down here, that's not going to work because it'll resize it from the center out. So you have to size it like this to get it to just scale on one side and not from the center. So I just quickly grab it, move it up to 3, watching the numbers up the top of the screen. There, it's done. Do the same thing with this one. Just watch the numbers. You don't even have to care to look at the prim. As long as you hit 3, you're good. And it's all done. Now there's a lot more we can do to this. The idea of this kind of building is to get your basic shape and your basic elements. Then you go back in and you add detail. Maybe you're going to use this as a mock-up for mesh in Blender, or maybe you're going to use this as a mock-up to start to get an idea what the specific elements are going to look like in their fine detail. And then you can take and build those elements and maybe use Mesh Studio to finish it off by meshing them after you've built them. And then that way you save on prims. Like this could be a pillar with detail. And then you could just bring it back in and size it accordingly and just copy the position. Like here, I'll show you. I'll take this one and I'll copy the position. Just paste it right back in. You can do that with any prim. It's done. It's there. And I use copy and paste on both size and position because it comes in handy. Like say I have something that I needed to center to something else. I can use that. So that's square symmetrical building. What about round symmetrical building? That's just as simple. We'll just drop a cylinder down here. We'll set it to 51 and 44. Remember, we want to do that first to get it on the grid snapping point. And then we'll size it to something like, I don't know, 8 by 8. And we'll take this and reduce it down to 0.25. Then what we'll do is we'll copy this because we want to use this again. And let's get it down here, make sure it's snapped right where it needs to be. And then we'll take this one and make it 0.2 by 0.2. And then what we'll do is we'll use this center point to copy this and move it out to the edge. And we'll do the same thing with the other. And we want to look at one and see that it's where we want it to be, and then make the other one the same way, and it is. So that means they're both perfectly in line perfectly evenly spaced. And we can test this by selecting the center one and selecting the other one. If we hold Control Shift down, we can see the different axis distances. Right now we're seeing position, which is the center of the two. If we hold Control Shift, we see that it's 4.1. If we select this one and this one, we can see that it's 4.1 as well, and then that way we know what the distance is from the center of this is to the center of this. So we don't need this center piece anymore. We can delete that. We can select these and shift drag them, then Control Z to put them back, then rotate. And in doing this, we can create circular symmetrical elements. And position them exactly where we want them. In this case, we could make a railing with these. There are any number of things you can use this type of thing for. And it's so quick and easy to do that you just, it's unreal how fast it is. So you can make circular railings in a matter of seconds. And then all you have to do after that, of course, is put something on top of it, which would be either another sphere cut, or you could use a torus. Let's try that real quick. We'll copy this one, make it a torus, and it's the opposite direction, so we have to flip it, and then we have to adjust the size. So we'll make this 8, and then we'll cut this one down to 0.1. That makes it flat, and then we need to cut it. So we're going to cut the center out of it. There's our railing. If we want, we can make it fat or thin, however we want to do it. If you adjust the other side, you take even more out of it. I think you're taking it off the bottom. Let me double check. I can't see what's happening here. Let's drop it down. Yeah, it's making it fatter, I believe. There you go. Yeah, that's what's happening. Okay, so then we would cut it by using this, and then we could have an opening in our railing. But you can see how when you might scale these up to be little posts that you would have a railing system. So then what you can do is, once you've done your symmetrical build part, then you can start to put together other things by taking those symmetrical elements and moving them around. Say I want to put an extension on this. I can just drag this out. Then I can just take these, resize them to whatever I need. I can do this. I can shift drag this, pull it out, get it lined up. Then I can resize it to whatever. For instance, I can size this to whatever I need. Let me look at this side real quick. Okay. So then I can move this in. Let me double check this. There we go. And then we can just either size this one out or size the side walls out to the end. Now I want to show something to you. Take a look at the positions of everything I've done so far. Look at these and look at these, the sizes and positions. I've done this quickly. I haven't I haven't done anything super slow. And look at how everything is in line. Now I did notice this right here. It's sitting at 42.125 to the X. Let's check that real quick. It looks to be correct. Let me look here. Not seeing a flicker there. Nothing there. I'm not seeing an edge here, so it's got to be right. So if we look at this and we see that we don't have any deviations from our grid, then we can see that symmetrical building is very conducive to keeping things in line, and it's very fast and efficient. So that is something I wanted to show you to give you an idea of what is possible if you put your mind to it and you just use common sense shortcuts. I could take this and move it in like that, get this up here in so far so that it can meet that peak there, and then I can adjust it in. And I want to check something here. Yeah, I made those flush. So there you have your complete build right there. And you can continue to expand from that and do whatever you need. You could put a window in here. Like, since this is already on its side, I could just put a window. Actually, it's on the wrong side. I was wrong. There it is. All right. So what is it? 3 and 2, 5. There we go. Simple. Okay, so that is symmetrical building, and those are the shortcuts. Use prims that are already there, and pick prims that are matching what you need to do, that are already there. The more prims you make, the more prims you'll have to pick from. At the very start, you don't have a lot of prims to pick from, just the bottom prim and whatever you're going to use the first one for. And then after that, you start to pull from different prims, and it's just so quick. So hopefully that helps you. And of course, you still have to be vigilant with your numbers. Always watch your numbers. Always watch. Get in there with your camera. Get in real close. Select objects. Go back and forth and see whether they match up like they're supposed to. You'll see this jump back and forth if they don't. Look for gaps. Look for overlap and flicker, because that's a telltale sign that you're having alignment issues. And always, when you're moving something, keep your mouse pointer outside of that ruler, because if you don't, you're moving freely. And keep it as far away as you can, and that'll keep you out of trouble that way. So let's take a look at a couple of other ones here. I've made these in previous iterations of this video, the ones that didn't make it. And you can see here I've done some other symmetrical builds. And then I've taken elements off of those and branched out. Just little things you can do. So hopefully that helps you. Here I'm working on a build for a tiny house. I was just starting something simple. This is a stairway that leads up to a loft area, which is going to be the bedroom. And this is going to be like a little study. And then the living room and kitchen will be in here somewhere. And this is just a size platform so I can tell what a 512 square meter is. And then once I flesh this out, I'll mesh many of the components that I need, like the furniture pieces like this, and then I'll bring it back in and put it back together to save prims, and also put some detail into my shapes. So anyway, those are my tips. I know there are more, but it's almost 4 a.m. and I'm tired, so if I think of anything else, I'll make another video. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.